So I recently published and posted a piece on the topic of gratitude where I dropped my 2 cents on the 14 particular items like family, home, and peanut butter that at that moment I deemed just too critical to my existence and yours if we share similar interests to not mention on record in front of a camera to then make public for the world to see and hear. Well, the original list was 28 items long, not 14. I decided to split it right down the middle to save the second half for a future part 2 type revisit.
I've been a little busy.
Okay, getting right into it. Number 15, condoms. I remember a show on BET called Comic View that high school me enjoyed, and one man in particular on one episode said something so profound I'll never forget. He said something like, "You gotta practice safe sex. You got to. Because you never know, man, you might catch something you can't never get rid of. Like a baby mama." And that and a no glove, no love story that my man Rocket told me back around the same time put firm in my head the idea that it is simply not going down without a condom. Fast forward to now, married with 2 kids by my wife and happy. And yes, there was the fair share of luck and good fortune, but all in all, it wasn't that hard. Well, the tireless nights of skipping out on the party and bullshit to do stupid and boring things like save money, pay for my first car, cash in full, and then eventually financing a second, learning martial arts on my own dime, studying from people like Sun Tzu, Bruce Lee, Tupac, Stephen Covey, George Carlin, and other great men and women, recording an experimental group album, recording and releasing a solo album, recording and releasing a mixtape featuring some of my best friends to try to get them some shine at precisely $0 per studio hour to them, helping take care of my dying of a brain tumor best friend's 3 sons through his last days and after his passing at 25, maintaining a full-time job and condo payments like a little male bird during mating season, fine-tuning his nest like his reproductive future depends on it because it did, and all by 26. That part was really hard and took lots of discipline, sacrifice, and persistence through heartbreak, pain, and general adulting. I mean the no baby mamas part. That part was fairly easy, no disrespect. Basically, I just stuck to rule 1 like a climactic blast of almost little Bill Clintons to a blue dress with no exceptions. And in closing, condoms are cheap, everywhere, easy to access and use, and if required by partners, prevent everything from STDs to unwanted pregnancy and are just about 100% effective. We've got, last I've heard, 41 forms of birth control and condoms at every corner, so there are no excuses really. And personally, I don't really care if you max out your body count before you settle down or wait until your wedding night, but it is my erection firm belief that if you follow these 3 guidelines, you're basically good. Number 1, don't fuck up people's lives. Number 2, don't break people's hearts. And number 3, condom required. By the way, this episode is brought to you by, if you've made it through this year, I'm proud of you. Moving on. Number 16, farming. Look, this one is really simple. We don't hunt and gather our food in the wild among other murderous predators anymore. That's it. That's really the entire argument. And that's really all that needs to be said. But I can add this. While bogus weekend hunters might solely eject some venison and shit every once in a while, the vast majority of us shop for food at markets and stock our first world harvest in our cold little boxes inside our warm little boxes. And unless you're Chef Marcella and you have everything plus 2 bonus tracks produced by Dr. Dre growing in your home garden and you can literally survive off what you produce yourself, your grocery listing, self-scanning, pin skipping, not putting your cart back ass better be kneeling in gratitude that you're alive in the richest time in history and that you can regularly do shit like go to Walmart and stock up on everything kings and queens of the past would trade their entire stock for. And obviously there are some problems and some people in the world still don't have enough to eat, but basically you and I don't know anyone who's starving as a result of there not being enough food to go around town, let's say, and you probably never have and never will. In closing, the amount of human effort put into traditional farming, indoor farming, vertical farming, experimental farming, planes, trains, trucks, and vans for shipping is to be honored, rightfully awed at, and prized like it's a top 28 things to be grateful for type thing to be grateful for. Let's go. Number 17, leisure, repetition, and routine. This is also a very, very simple one, and we're not going to try and use the exception as a rule. Obviously, there are those struggling unbelievably just to get from day to day, but most of us have the kind of life that allows for planning of things like what we're going to eat maybe 2 meals to 2 weeks in advance, and knowing it'll happen, where we'll be once we punch out because you most likely have a job, and who will be there, and what kinds of activities will and won't be occupying that time until it's time to recharge and do it all over again. That's most people dicking about on social media like you're doing right now. And by leisure, repetition, and routine, I don't mean professional travelers that appear on your phone whose lives are probably far more depressing and dismal than they'd ever let anyone to be led to believe. Otherwise, they'd be too busy living that life and wouldn't have the time to be on their phones to post about it around the clock 7 days a week. I do mean those of us with the basic necessities of life, food, clothes, shelter, family, work, general purpose, met and satisfied to a relatively high degree compared to any and all historical standards, even by our own standards. No matter how you spend your time off the clock with or without family, be grateful and not ungrateful and whiny for your mostly cozy but probably not quite 6 figures lifestyle that affords you the same shit different day. I'd prefer people balance the bullshit with the hard shit, and in the traditional, there's a triggering word, traditional,
we will use the old ways.
Traditional manner of work before play. Maybe taking a walk before checking the gram or the hub. But at the very least, be grateful for it. Because there are people who live unbelievably brutal existences, often as children and through adulthood, who don't have the luxuries we do, like being able to utter things like, hey, what do you guys want to do 6 Tuesdays from now? Just check out books like The Gift of Fear by Gavin de Becker, In Order to Live by Yeonmi Park, German Boy by Wolfgang W.E. Samuels, Solito by Javier Zamora, The Diary of Anne Frank, The Freedom Writer's Diary, Ordinary Men by Christopher R. Browning, The Gulag Archipelago by Alexander Solzhenitsyn, Cry Like a Man by Jason Wilson, Hey Kiddo by, I'm gonna butcher this, Jarrett J. Krosachka, and books like them that point out the seemingly endless and almost always needless suffering that is just a part of life. You should be able to find in at least one of them a reason to be grateful for the little things inappropriately labeled mundane that make up the life we'd miss with agonizing tears if, for example, imprisoned, invaded, on the run, persecuted, in extreme poverty, starving, or terminally ill, among everything else that can crush us like a couple of fat airline passengers sandwiching Sydney Watson. Number 18. Books. Fun fact, I've never had a bookshelf of my own in any home I've lived in anywhere until now. And this thing back here, another gift from the wife, is one of my favoriteest things in this whole world. And I'm not going to go into detail right now about who and what's in it, but that thing right there is basically the precious to my Smeagol.
Precious!
As a kid, I remember my parents had books arriving at the house by mail for my siblings and I. And I remember very vividly all of the, for example, Fraggle Rock and Muppet Baby, Disney yearbooks that were like a compilation, and a lot of the short form classics like Pinocchio, The Fox and the Hound, and my favorite, Sleeping Beauty. I specifically remember this one page that I thought was really cool, the fold out page in the middle of the book where the magic spell had the king, the queen, and all the guests asleep at the long table, and at the end where Maleficent becomes a big black and purple dragon. I just got up right now to go get this because it was so important to not be able to mention. I even have this one book called El Flautista de Hamelin, which is a Pied Piper story, a tiny treasure. And in this home, my wife and son are probably the biggest bookworms, but I also, like my little girl, love a good book like a son of a bitch.
Major input! Viper, wait here. I'll be right back after these words. Input, 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 woo!
And you know what? Not having to memorize everything ever learned, story ever told in an ancient human world where word travels at the sped... And you know, really not having to memorize everything ever learned, story ever told in an ancient human world where word travels at the speed of Fred's 2 feet is a damn blessing. Reading along with writing have to be just about the most important skill and love that can be passed on by setting the example to future generations. So decide what interests you, find a book about it, and read, you lucky fuck. And read to your kids too. Number 19, roads and maps. If you really think about it, the world is basically a big, hot and cold, high and low, soft and hard place for us to explore and basically die in. That's the world, and in the last 2,000 years or so, we've gone from primitive maps of a barely explored Earth with a breathtaking but very limited understanding of the world around us to Google Earth and a navigator in your pocket. And there probably isn't anywhere you can go that you won't find at least 30 different ways to die quickly or slowly and in excruciating agony. Navigating this world intelligibly and reliably is one of the most important skills human beings have ever developed and learned. I can give you a personal example. I took a part-time job once delivering pizza at night, and anyone who works in food delivery these days can imagine doing so without their dash-mounted Waze alerting them to everything from roadkill to police and delays. I worked with some pretty impressive people who could find their way to any house without a navigator or a map. Meanwhile, I couldn't have done the job without my TomTom. And since I'm from the 1900s, before that, I did what my parents did. I kept that big-ass map book that 7-Eleven had an updated version of every year in the car. Now, I'm not quite so old that I remember ever using or seeing poster-sized fold-out maps, but still, that would be better than being lost or pulling over to use your street shout-out at a gas station. Basically, be grateful your life isn't the Oregon Trail, as much fun as that game was. Number 20. Teachers and coaches. I learned in the last couple of years that apparently it's true that even a small amount of genuine encouragement can be the difference between a person spiraling irrevocably out of control or a person putting their life back together. And while parents should always be the first line of encouragement and appropriate praise, teachers and coaches play a vital part in society with regard to the shaping of our future stewards of global infrastructure. We all know and love movies like Lean on Me, Stand and Deliver, Hardball, Dangerous Minds, Remember the Titans, which as of this recording I still haven't watched. My bad, sis. And we all love the scene at the end where the heroes look beat the fuck up and demoralized because Thanos is about to get the sixth stone and snap. And the coach or teacher delivers that speech over dramatic music that slowly builds up as Oh Captain, My Captain goes God mode and waxes poetic back the team's mojo.
Whatever it takes. Good luck.
He's pretty good at that.
Right?
And the reason we love those movies and those scenes, I believe, is because we understand on a very primitive and subconscious level the importance of role models and heroes. And I can't not shout out all the coaches and teachers, many close friends and family, but also all over the world, in classrooms, writing books, giving lectures, volunteering their time and effort, who continue to do to the best of their ability. Obviously, there are bad teachers and bad coaches, just like there are bad parents, to use old language. To the best of their ability, the job of encouraging kids to become the best versions of themselves they can, despite the countless obstacles, failures, injuries, and discouraging moments, because they have so much to offer the world and it's worth the back-breaking uphill journey to bring forth. So shout out to all you amazing people. Number 21, school. Now let's be real clear about one thing right away. It doesn't take a scholar or a researcher doing a magnum deep dive into the public school system and modern universities as they exist and function now, to the degree that they do, to uncover that these institutions are flawed on many levels and subject to corruption and perverse influence by harmful political ideologies, and are badly in need of repair. That isn't hard to see. The argument could even be made that public and private schools as well as colleges are beyond saving and that homeschool for everyone is the only option. I think that's too simple and a little bit shallow, but it's good enough for those who prefer to reduce unbelievably complex problems into stupidly simplistic categories such as this is good and this is bad, or this is right and this is wrong, says the one talking shit on the mic. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the idea of organized learning institutions that prepare children for the future by teaching and reinforcing things like, but not limited to, reading, writing, math, science, understanding of basic biology, as well as nature and our place in it. Parents, of course, should teach all these things too, and first, and reinforce them often. However, the sad reality is that the paycheck to paycheck lifestyle occupied by far too many hardworking parents doing the best they can with what they have, combined with their own insufficient education, makes schooling at home difficult because of a parent's own limitations, both monetary and with regard to what a parent can do and teach. Jacques Fresco, co-founder of the Venus Project and author of this book, The Best That Money Can't Buy, Beyond Politics, Poverty, and War, one of my favorites, dedicated an entire chapter to education. Chapter 14 is titled Education Minds in the Making. And I'll read a very short bit here that sums up beautifully what schooling could look like in the future if we really put the effort into it. Children taught through cooperative, participatory, hands-on experiences develop better socialization skills and self-confidence. Instead of rote learning, our new schools could provide opportunities for children to improve their interactions with one another in real-life situations. He continues, education consists primarily of rote learning, of simply memorizing concepts and propaganda. In the future, children will not be satisfied to accept ideas without an in-depth exploration and understanding of them. Also adding, if we want children to achieve a positive, constructive relationship with one another and become contributing members of society, we must design an environment that produces that desired behavior. And he's just about as smart a motherfucker as smart motherfuckers get, so yeah. Here's another book I wanted to mention real quick for no other reason other than that my wife got this for me for Christmas, and I think it's a fantastic read. It's called The Rings of Venus by Pat McCord. It's a work of fiction based on what the world might look like if we achieved the test city. So thank you again, Amor, for all the cool shit you get for me. That was fun. Moving on. Number 22, transportation. Again, life today isn't the Oregon Trail or following Jesus around on foot in no arch support having 0th century sandals. Today, we drive, bike, or walk in overpriced sneakers with arch support. The child who made the shoes made sure of it. Not only do we get around much better and faster than ever, we have more options than ever. I'm sure you've seen those electric scooters for rent by smartphone scan left lying around just about everywhere. And not only do we get around better and faster than ever before, so do our first world consumable goods. For example, what can't be found on Amazon and delivered to your door in unnecessarily overpackaged packaging. And not at all to be slighted here, let's also remember to show some gratitude for the fact that our obviously imperfect and less than Fresconian infrastructure is what it is. See, I remember the culture shock from my first visit to Cochabamba, seeing my birth country through my pampered, pussificated American perspective. For us, while we were in Bolivia, methods of transportation included mostly walking, micro, trufi, radio taxi, or motorized scooter. In my mind, I had questions. I had so many questions. Two, for example, swirling about my brain were, what? What do you mean y'all got roads literally made out of stones laid out and mortared onto the earth in street-like patterns instead of smooth asphalt everywhere? And what? What do you mean if I need to use the bathroom in the middle of the night at our uncle's unfinished castle, I gotta find my way around this cold, dark house because the whole house is made of concrete and not wood and drywall, work my way down the unfinished U-turning death stairs with no handrails on any side and concrete floor to break my fall should I accidentally get curious about whether or not gravity works the same south of the equator as it does north of it, then to the cold, dark, and unfinished bathroom where instead of activating the light by using a switch, button, or knob, I have to do so by walking to the end of the bathroom to the hole in the wall about 5 feet off the floor and expertly, carefully, perfectly connect the not connected wires with not 110 but 220 volts potentially flowing through my 8-9-year-old body like a Joker hand buzzer.
Oh, I got a live one here.
And hopefully but not usually doing this on the first try. Then use the bathroom, then undo the death wires, make my way back like a Berenstain Bear exiting the spooky old tree, up the death stairs, which were far less deathy on the way up than they were on the way down, and back to bed. What do you mean? Questions like that. I got a little sidetracked, but those were the kinds of thoughts that I had while staring out the window of a micro at 7-foot glass shard-in mortared covered walls around houses in my uncle's neighborhood, because typical security systems aren't practical, affordable, or even effective in this part of the world, as the sweet afternoon call of the Cholita hollering, "Esquina, por favor," to the driver for him to pull all the bumpy roadway over so she and the baby in her arm and another swaddled on her back could exit, all while emitting the standard issued chola smell or aroma to passengers on her way down the aisle. And my bad for getting sidetracked, but again, whether you're electro-scooting, driving, hopping the connector, taking the metro to the last stop of the yellow line, or riding in the passenger side of your best friend's ride, don't be a scrub and be grateful for modern day transportation. Number 23, and the first of the second half of our part 2 of our 28 things to be grateful for. Smart people. Now, I don't know exactly how people define smart or what smart looks like in action to other people, but generally, I mean the great engineers, technical personnel, scientists, artists, and people who somehow found a way when there was seemingly no way and make possible your overindulged and my overindulged, privileged first world life. Granted, that's pretty vague, and I could give a list of people I consider smart, but it wouldn't necessarily be by name because although many great contributors in human history have names and faces, many do not. Not every person who worked on the Brooklyn Bridge is remembered, nor is everyone who worked on the Empire State Building, international airports, hospitals, plumbing and sanitation, telescopes, or communication devices that eventually became our smartphones properly credited in the history books. We'll never even know how much human creativity and effort went into things like learning to farm, build shelter, navigate, and generally survive, then thrive. But what we do know for sure is that it didn't all come about from stupid people never learning from their stupid mistakes. Seems to me, to the best of my understanding, that it came about as a consequence of a species so smart, like 1 in a billion species smart, mostly learning from most of their stupid mistakes and being willing to try again and again, even if it means more failures and death.
Just do it!
And for that, we thank you. Moving right along, number 24, toys and games. Most reasonable people, I think, understand that two things can be true at the same time. For example, we can reasonably say that kids can and should learn STEM, but care more about toys and play, no matter how we wish things were. And when I say games, I don't mean abstract games or sports and equipment-based games, and definitely not computer or video games, not fundamentally these things. I mean more like the basic idea and perhaps instinct of play and the objects in the world we make into playthings that we connect with on an almost religious level. I remember movie scenes like, for example, The Pursuit of Happiness, how sad Jaden Smith's character is to have dropped his Captain America action figure while running with Dad to catch a bus. Scenes like that very accurately illustrate the connection between kids and a toy.
Oh, the power of the toy. It can earn millions. Millions for the little old toy collector. Me.
And anyone who's a parent and experienced their kid losing a beloved toy or stuffed animal, or thinking they've lost it but are just unable to find it because they didn't really look for it in the first place, or they didn't put it away in the space made for it like they've been asked to do, knows the protrusion of the lower lip, the quick and sharp inhales, the watery eyes, and the eventual literal heartbreak that follows. All parents know that one. We're so connected with toys on a level I'm not qualified to explain, but I know it because kids sleep better, for example, and happier when they hold their favorite toy or favorite stuffed animal or baseball glove or basketball. And when we get older, we think we've outgrown these things because we no longer sleep with toys and stuffies.
Bullshit!
I really believe that the toys and stuffies evolved into things like radios and music players, posters of our heroes and idols and people we look up to, shelved car models and fancy lighting and decor, and other little trinkets and treasures. And it seems pretty reasonable to me to assume that we'd feel the same loss over any of these things as kids do over their favorite toys and plushes. Toys and games, man, it's why Christmas is the best holiday whether you celebrate it or not, because there's more time off work, more time with loved ones, more toys and play collectively than at any other time of the year. And speaking of Christmas, I recently watched a movie with the family called A Boy Named Christmas. Pleasantly surprised, like 10 out of 10 surprised for me, and you should check it out if you haven't yet. And as far as games go, games are so central to us as a species that it's demonstrated across other species. Species. Chimps play, dogs play, cats play, rats play. This is old, this is known, and having the luxury of being able to fit play into your life even once in a while is a blessing if there ever was one. For me, for example, it was my little brown suitcase full of perfectly organized toys, my missile-launching robot who could walk and play music, or model cars and things like that, model airplanes, and stuff that I'd borrow from my dad, for example, like his tape recorder or his 110 film camera, just to take a picture or two of all my toys and stuff lined up just right. Checkers, pillow wars, puzzles, basketball, and even video games did a lot to keep me and a lot of other kids out of trouble and off the streets and at home with the people who love them the most. I have no ending for this, so I'll just close by saying that I can probably whoop your ass in Mario Party and Mario Kart. Cry me a river. Number 25. modern medicine, natural and pharma. I'm not going to get too long-winded about this one because honestly the topic bores the shit out of me, even though I recognize that I basically owe my existence to it. Modern medicine, whether on the natural and organic side or on the man-made and big pharma side, is something that we take for granted every time we forget for a moment that we're basically not dying at this very moment as a result of laboring men and women whose scientific and medical breakthroughs created a world where as a species we're basically unaffected by things like the common cold that would be killing each and every one of us right now without things like antibiotics and vaccines and the proper application of them.
I'm not unwell, thank you.
And there are no shortcuts and no cure-alls, and there's no one answer for every person. I personally, for example, had a bad experience with a prescribed sleep medication that took me under like a powerful sleep that I was not comfortable with. It was like going to one of your favorite places in the world, but in a car being driven by a maniac and feeling like you could die right now.
I don't care for that, you know?
And there are a million more horror stories about misuse of drugs and pharmaceuticals, but basically, we live in a world that pretty much whatever you have, there's a treatment for it. And most of our problems we could fix by getting off our fucking phones, sleeping properly, exercising, not getting drunk and eating shit all the time, but for everything else, there's modern medicine. Number 26, technology and machines, both software and hardware. Your home, the lights, the heat, the AC, the running water and not having to use an outhouse, your kitchen and everything in it, your car, your job, your city, your country, your phone, your bad habits and your good ones. Your entire way of life is brought to you by technology and machines.
You're welcome.
I'm going to include software as well as hardware because so much of our life is automated and is dependent upon computers talking to other computers. Think about it. You don't know how anything works. Neither do I. You can't take apart your phone, your car, your fridge. You can't build a road, a house. We can't even point to our kidney with certainty. This shit is so funny. George Carlin's famous bit about an end of the world scenario at the close of his special titled Life is Worth Losing painted rather vividly a beautiful picture of a world without electricity. You want to know what your world would look like today without technology or even with technology but none of it working for us? Check out that bit. You'll be on your knees with mouth open ready to give thanks for having all these toys and gizmos that do literally everything for us. And get your mind out of the gutter. It's basically like this. Compared to 99% of people by historic standards, we basically have a bat cave full of gadgets for every occasion. And if you don't understand that, then you could probably use a Rick James joke.
What?
Number 27, coming in second to last in a no particular order list of 14 more things to be grateful for is community. Now I understand, again, the exception and the rule that there are some people who prefer and do better with lives off the grid or at least a satisfactory distance from crowds, towns, and most forms of degenerate fun. Personally, I prefer to live in a community full of people where I also have the option to keep to myself in a genuinely fulfilling home environment. And I say home environment because not every house feels like a home for reasons we need not get into right now. And maybe I'm biased. No, definitely I'm biased because we're all biased to a degree, but I grew up in a cul-de-sac among cul-de-sacs where there was almost no automobile hazards and every kid played outside. Later on, I lived in a single family home with a basketball court in the driveway and lots of houses like that, meaning lots of pickup games at different points in the neighborhood. And even though Richmond Highway is Richmond Highway and the fuckery ranges from the occasional petty theft of bicycles from the locked shed to any number of more siren-related events, I would argue that I had pretty much a classic childhood overall. And that, I believe, is in large part because of how much I loved my community. I loved the lake, I loved the pool, I loved the shape of the streets, I loved the woods nearby with soccer fields, picnic areas, and dark tales and rumors of all kinds. And love of community is something that, with the help of my amazing wife, I'm happy to be passing on to thing 1 and thing 2. Last but not least, number 28, music. Life's seasoning. I can't tell you how perfect my wife's timing was, as always. She brought my dinner to me at my desk, seasoned rice with broccoli over chicken-like vegan stuff, with the Sweet Baby Ray's on the side so I can add to my liking. How perfect is it that she brings it to me as I'm beginning to write my life without music is like food without flavor metaphor. Also, I rarely eat at my desk while I'm working. While I'm watching a movie or YouTube, absolutely. Writing or recording, No, not usually. And speaking of my wife, one of the things she says often that I love, I really mean this, is that the book version of something was definitely better than the movie. Now, two things here. First, she can always back it up because she's read the book version of just about every goddamn movie that's come out in the last 20 years or so. So it's not just a thing that she says like it is with a lot of people who like to say that to con people into thinking that they spend their free time lost in a page turner rather than scrolling mindlessly through TikTok until 3 a.m. when they finally say to themselves, puta madre, it's almost 4 a.m. and I got shit to do tomorrow. Let me close this out once and for all and check Instagram and Facebook one more time, then put this away and sleep a solid 2, maybe 3 hours. Second, I'm a man who gives credit where credit is due, to the best of my ability, and when I'm not impulsively shitting on someone's day in a random social media trolling. And I know when to apologize and when to do things like admit defeat. Which brings me to what I have to say next. With a heavy heart and an itchy ass, they're right. The books are usually better.
God damn it.
But getting back to music, you know what no book has? An epic score or soundtrack. And am I saying that all soundtracks are epic or even good? No. Also, obviously, all books aren't good. And I'm not saying all books are better than the movie. I don't think they are. For example, I've read Alexandre Dumas's The Count of Monte Cristo twice and watched both the 1934 and 2002 movie adaptations. I can tell you without spoiling any of them that all three basically tell the same story. Edmond Dantes is betrayed, unjustly imprisoned, befriended by an elder priest, makes an impossible escape from prison to set off on an even more impossible plot for revenge. The end. But also, all three tell very different stories with very different endings that all work, in my opinion, in their own way. And I swear to you, the music for each film was, if you ask me, spot on for the stories and sequences. And that's my point. Not that music is better than reading or movies are better than books or vice versa, but music is something that has, as long as there has been music actually, always made things better. When done properly, of course. We're all familiar with Nickelback and Elvis Crespo, which brings me to the point of my usually longer than necessary life without music is like food without flavor rant. It's the best metaphor that I've been able to come up with so far for what I imagine life would be like without music. Just imagine food with no flavor. You still get all the nutrients, all the proteins, vitamins, minerals, omega-3s, all of it. But it all tastes like unseasoned and thoroughly cooked tofu. All of your favorite foods, tofu. All of your favorite drinks, tofu water. Every dessert you eat while your wife and kids aren't looking and probably won't find out about because you're the one who cleans out the cabinets and fridge. Tofu, son. So probably, yeah, we can maybe build what we've built, eat what we eat, live where we live, have our needs met in a world without music. But who wants to live in a world without, for example, the sounds of Mega Man, Double Dragon, The Legend of Zelda, Super Mario, GoldenEye 64, Tupac, Biggie, fuck Biggie, Nas, just kidding, Biggie's cool, Rakim, Glenn Miller, Metallica, Juan Luis Guerra, Michael Jackson, Herbie Hancock, every Hans Zimmer score, and all the best commercial jingles. Who'd want to live in a world like that? Not I, said the me.
Bye, Felicia.
And I think let's leave it at that. So thanks for watching, thanks for listening, thanks for clicking all the buttons and supporting my work. It's sincerely appreciated. Bye for now and Happy New Year, mi gente. May 2023 be the year you see in the mirror the best version of yourself you've ever seen. Peace.